File Item 141, SB 374. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 374 by Senator Steinberg and others, and act relating to firearms.
Mr. Jones Sawyer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is what SB 374 addresses. This bill will prohibit the future sale, purchase, manufacture, importation, or transfer in California of semi-automatic rifles that can accept detachable magazines. Rifles with detachable magazines have a virtual unlimited capacity to kill. It is this specific feature that this bill targets, the ability to shoot unchecked semi-automatic gunfire. By focusing on the function of these weapons, this bill is aimed at the commercialization of these weapons and not, I repeat, not the rights of sporting gun and hunting enthusiasts. Specifically, SB 374 will amend the current definition of illegal assault weapon to include a semi-automatic or centerfire rifle that does not have a fixed magazine with the capacity to accept 10 or fewer rounds. Enthusiasts of the AR-15 can still buy a brand new AR-15. This bill requires only that the new gun have a fixed low-capacity magazine. This bill does not ban the AR-15. It bans the detachable magazine. In addition, SB 374 requires current gun owners to submit a firearm ownership record for handguns purchased prior to 1991 and rifles with a detachable magazine purchased prior to January 1st, 2014. California has been a national leader in regulating the proliferation of military-style weapons in our communities since 1989. But even these laws have shown some loopholes and gaps and have been exploited. SB 374 merely updates California statutes to stop the workarounds. I ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Donnelly.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I don't know what the right word is to express how strongly I oppose this bill. There's just 26 words in the Second Amendment. 26 words. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. When I hear the member talk about assault weapons and AK-47s, that has nothing to do with this bill. This bill is about detachable magazines. Originally, it would ban 22 rifles that had detachable magazines. Well, nobody ever considered a .22 rifle to be an assault weapon, but the author of this bill wanted to create a whole new category of rifles that could be banned, classified as assault weapons, and therefore never transferred, never sold, and ultimately would wipe out entire classifications so that they could never be passed on. The sweeping nature of this bill goes beyond belief. Permission to use a prop.
Permission denied. Please proceed.
Okay, since I can't show the picture of this rifle, I will talk about it. The Mini 14 would be banned under this. The Mini 14 is a ranch rifle. The objection here is the detachable magazine. So the author originally wanted to get rid of all rim fire, all center fire, but his scope and his reach went so far that the opposition was so strong that he pulled off the rim fire, which is basically 22 rounds. But almost virtually every other gun that is a rifle that has a detachable magazine would be banned. Not only the Mini 14, but an M1 carbine. If you're wondering what that is because you haven't heard about it in the news, it's because they never used those in commission of a crime. Those were used in World War II. It's an antique. It's a relic. That would be banned under SB 374. But you know what's really the most offensive about this bill is the intent of this bill is to erase the Second Amendment, to wipe out those 26 words. And you know, right here on this floor, in 1968, there was a protest by the people. As a matter of fact, it was the Black Panthers who came onto this floor carrying rifles, many of which would be banned under this bill. And those rifles were loaded. But in 1968, when they were protesting, when they were standing here to exercise their constitutional First Amendment right to protest against a ban on the open carry of weapons. Because you know what the Black Panthers were trying to do? They weren't from rural areas where they were hunting. They were trying to defend their First Amendment rights. They were showing up with rifles, and they were showing up with law books in the other hand. Because they wanted to make their voice heard. They wanted to stand against police brutality at a time when that was epidemic. They wanted to stand up for the right to defend their lives against criminals. So they came onto this floor carrying the very rifles you want to ban, and they were not arrested on this floor. The sergeants took the rifles and gave them back to them unloaded. That is the history of this body. And now, on this day in 2013, we would deny the people the right to stand up, the right to defend their lives, the right to protest and defend their freedom from tyranny. That is what this bill, SB 374, does. The goal of this bill, understand this, colleagues, if you vote for this bill, you are voting against the Second Amendment. You are voting to erase it so that there will not be 10 amendments in the Bill of Rights. There will only be 9 after you pass this bill in the state of California. Make no mistake. This bill, I urge you, I don't know how to use any stronger language. I'm going to use my fully automatic no button to say no, 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 no,
Mr. Donnelly,
no. And
your time has expired.
I urge you to say no as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. Mr. Dolly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition of this measure because it bans rifles that nobody would ever think are assault weapons. This bill does away with the requirement that a rifle include at least one military feature such as a pistol grip or a flash suppressor. By doing away with that requirement, the weapon would be defined as an assault weapon, even though no one would mistake it as such. So if we pass this law, it means gun owners, and especially those who inherit such guns, run the risk of violating the law. A person who inherits a legally defined assault weapon only has 90 days to dispose of it and cannot keep it, even if it was lawfully registered by the original owner. Therefore, this bill would have vast unintended consequences, given the sheer number of rifles it would ban. Members, having a removable magazine is the safest way to remove jammed ammunition, which this bill would ban. The design that this bill contemplates is not the standard and will promote unsafe design. As a result, it will undermine, not promote, public safety. The supporters of this measure talk about saving lives, but it is already illegal for felons, those convicted of certain misdemeanors, and those with judgment mental health problems to own or possess a firearm. It is already a crime to harm anyone with a firearm. So what's behind the push for this bill? It is really about further criminalizing the possession of legal firearms by law-abiding citizens of California. That is unacceptable. I ask for a no vote.
Thank you, Mr. Dolly. Ms. Waldron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise in opposition to SB 374 because it won't stop criminals. What this bill would do is make criminals of those who fail to register their currently legal weapon with the state. This bill would ban semi-automatic centerfire rifles merely because they lack a fixed magazine. That would have the effect of banning millions of rifles currently in common use for hunting and self-defense. Though existing owners would be able to keep their affected firearms by registering them, it will deprive the public of common and widely used firearms. This bill would also impose a fee on many rifle owners who have not violated current law. The new tax and mandates of this measure won't affect criminals. Criminals have already broken the law to commit their crimes. Passing new laws won't make them think twice. It's one reason why the California State Sheriff's Association opposes this bill. They said SB 374 would have no impact on the ability of criminals or other prohibited persons from obtaining firearms. Given that the vast majority of gun crimes are committed with handguns, this measure is misguided. Banning many common hunting and sporting rifles would only affect sportsmen and hunters. Criminals who commit the most violent crimes would not be affected. I ask for your no vote.
Thank you, Ms. Waldron. Ms. Melendez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill. I do greatly appreciate the fact that what this bill will do was pointed out very clearly and succinctly, but what was not pointed out was what the bill will not do. So allow me to do that for you. It will not improve public safety. This is not going to have an effect on criminals who are looking to purchase weapons and commit crimes with them. They will pay no attention whatsoever to this bill. This will have no effect on decreasing crime. Again, criminals don't follow the law. That's why they're called criminals. We have an opportunity here to show that we are not hell-bent on infringing on constitutional rights of Californians. I understand that there is great concern about the crime, particularly in certain areas of our state, and some of our members have expressed great concern about the crime rates in their district. I fully understand that, but this is not the way to control the crime rate. This will have no impact on the crime rate as far as I can tell. I would be surprised if we saw a decrease. I would ask members that you consider very carefully the rights that you are about to take away from your constituents, and I would request your no vote.
Thank you, Ms. Melendez. Mr. Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, I too rise in opposition. Let me just suggest that we think a little bit more about the problems that the people who commit these vile acts with these things and deal with the issues that maybe face them mentally, spiritually, or otherwise. But let's remember that it is the person using the thing that is the problem. It is not the thing. And to throw an unconstitutional net over the thing is merely a futile act to try to get to the very problems that we are facing with gun violence. So let me try to visit with you a little bit about why I'm opposed and why I think we ought to be opposed. Because at the heart of gun violence is not the question of how we limit rights or the thing, but how we address the human factor of these situations. And I think it means we've got to first acknowledge that perpetrators of these crimes are not everyday, ordinary, law-abiding citizens. And it is clear that these acts are committed by criminals and individuals who are mentally unstable. It is clear that these acts can be mitigated. We can help change behavior and therefore end the violence. But it's not about outlawing the thing. So, members, our solutions ought to recognize that first we've got to get to law enforcement and continue to support law enforcement having the tools to get the guns out of the hands of criminals and to prosecute those who use them for these crimes to the fullest extent of the law. We should not restrict the constitutional prerogative of every American because of the actions of a few. And members, we also need to strengthen and support the mentally ill and to better focus services to identify and help these potential problems get early intervention and early care for people who may very well cross over that threshold of mental illness. Additionally, I think we have to be laying the groundwork for communities to improve safety and security and procedures at, around, and near our schools. I think these are the kinds of things that we can jointly support and be a part of really getting to the heart of the problem we're facing. While we may not be able to stop every random act of evil, we must be prepared to react appropriately in those situations, and I think we have worked together on some efforts to do that. The approaches we employ need to take stock of the whole crisis we face, not just the weapons, not just the physical things that are used to commit these vicious acts. These are simple, they're straightforward steps that we can take together that actually will curb gun violence. And I think we need to shift the conversation, members. Shift it from guns to the actions of criminals who should not have those firearms in the first place. Then we will make real significant progress. Members, the rights enshrined in our Constitution, including the Second Amendment, particularly because it was embedded in our Bill of Rights, they are the bedrock for every other law in our country. And I would remind you that our founders put into the Bill of Rights the Second Amendment as much as they did the Third and the Fourth and the Fifth and the First. They believed that these were universal rights that came with our birth, that came with our citizenship. And that's why it was enshrined in the Constitution. We cannot, and please let's not lose sight of the basic fact as we determine how best to deal with our culture of gun violence. There are much better ways to approach this, members, than banning a constitutional prerogative.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Ms. Grove.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I, too, rise in opposition of SB 374. Colleagues, instead of trying to do a so-called assault weapons grab from law-abiding citizens, why don't we go after the actual people that are really committing these crimes? Crimes are out of control in a lot of our cities like Oakland, Stockton, and parts of Los Angeles, and these crimes are not being committed with so-called assault weapons. They're certainly not being committed by people who legally purchase these weapons. This bill, like so many other gun-grabbing bills that are going to see on this floor, is unfortunately just an attempt to limit our Second Amendment rights and control people in our state. Colleagues, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, please stop and think. You're making criminals out of otherwise law-abiding citizens. And an assault rifle, so-called assault rifle, is, you put a pistol grip or a flash suppressor on a black weapon, it doesn't change the kill capacity of a .223 round going through it, or a 5.56 millimeter round. The bottom line is it still has the same kill capacity. So changing the outside of a weapon, or a detachable magazine or not a detachable magazine with 10 rounds or 20 rounds, doesn't change the kill capacity of the weapon. So I would just ask that you not infringe on our Second Amendment rights and that you vote no.
Thank you, Ms. Grove. Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in strong opposition to this bill. I'd like to echo the comments of my other colleagues who mentioned our Second Amendment rights and say very simply that the Second Amendment exists. It was written to protect us against tyrannical governments. It was also written to protect us against everyone else. It is our fundamental right to bear arms. Two of the cities of the United States who have the strictest gun control laws, Washington, D.C. and Chicago, also have the highest homicide rates. Simply put, if people on the street are potentially armed, other people won't look to visit harm upon them because it might not turn out so well. Historically speaking, there's been many cases of gun control for various reasons with very dire results. Permission to read briefly, Mr. Speaker?
Without objection.
In 1970, Uganda established gun control. From 1971 to 1979, 300,000 Christians unable to defend themselves were rounded up and killed. In Guatemala in 1964, from 1964 to 1981, 100,000 Mayan Indians unable to defend themselves were rounded up and killed. In 1929, the Soviet Union established gun control. From 1929 to 1953, about 20 million dissidents, unable to defend themselves, were rounded up and killed. And I'm not even starting about the Jews in Western Europe. On April 29th, 1992, I lived in East LA. I was going to school at Cal State LA. And you might recall there were the LA riots. I can tell you for those days, there were many times you could have picked up the telephone and the police would not have come. If you had a weapon in your home, you were safer. We need to protect our Second Amendment rights. Our founding fathers had it right. I strongly urge a no vote on this measure.
Mr. Jones Sawyer, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill does not infringe on an individual's right to have and own a weapon. As I said earlier, you will be able to legally own a weapon as long as you register it. Now, we all remember on December 14th, 2012, which is kind of burned in our memories, on that date we were collectively horrified by the nation's second deadliest shooting by a single person. Adam Lanza murdered 20 children and 6 adult staff members in a mass murder at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut. September 27th of that same year, gunman kills 7 on a rampage in Minneapolis. August 5th, gunman kills 7 on a rampage in Wisconsin Temple. July 20th, gunman kills 12 on a rampage in a Colorado movie theater. How many more innocent American men, women, and children have to be slaughtered going on about their daily lives before we respond and do something? The list goes on and on and on in cities of Tucson, Arizona, Fort Hood, Texas, Virginia, Columbine, Colorado, Cleveland Elementary, Stockton, and unfortunately Santa Monica. We have to do something. This is the beginning. I appreciate what the opposing side has said. In fact, some of the recommendations about law enforcement, we should do that in conjunction with this bill. I've seen, unfortunately, in my community, the results of a semi-automatic has been going on for years and years and decades, at birthday parties, at weddings, quinceañeras, where bullets have ravaged communities over decades and decades. And we should have done something a long time ago about these weapons, about the ability to kill. I am not, and we are not, this bill does not prohibit lawful gun-owning sportsmen to own a weapon. The weapons aren't there to become mass killing machines. We're not in that business. That is something the military does. I remember very young, I used to watch this movie called The Deer Hunter. It was with Robert De Niro, and they had a group of friends who went to Vietnam, but they used to go and hunt all the time. And the big thing about hunting, it was one shot. If you could bring a big buck down with one shot, then you were a sportsman. He went through the horrors of war, and at the end of the movie, after all that he had been through, after he saw what it did mentally to his friends, war and guns, what the dismemberment of his best friend, at the end of the movie, he had a chance to kill this buck that he'd always been trying to kill for quite a long time with that one shot. And he didn't. And he didn't because he knew how devastating it is to have these weapons in the hands of the wrong people. Most of the people that I mentioned in here had the opportunity and the ability to get these weapons legally. And so now what I'm asking for us to do is to stop the carnage, stop the killing, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
The clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 41, ayes 42, noes 30. The measure passes.
Thank you.